Well, wonderful world of YouTube. It's your boy Orange Beanie Guy. Mitchell's fucking not here again. He had to go celebrate a birthday of a loved one. God, loser. I'm actually here with a couple of my friends, a whole lot of friends actually. I'm here with my buddy Anthony.
How's it going?
I'm here with my buddy Porter.
Yo.
And I'm here with my buddy Mark.
Cheers.
And they're all kind of scattered across the room, so you're not gonna have to deal with a little.
Sound's gonna be great.
Yeah, the audio might be a little all over the place, but I called them in here today because Mitchell didn't want to be here because he doesn't care about you all. Yeah, I said that, Mitchell. You're going to go back and listen to this. You're going to be like, ooh, it burns because it's the second time you've done this. But anyways, my friend Anthony here, he's got a little bit of a list here that we'd like to go through and talk about. We were kind of riff-raffing about video games at work, and I want to kind of pass this over to him just so we can get into this.
Yeah, how's it going, guys? And let me start off by saying that it's actually it's really cool to be here with you guys. But can I just say how much of a blow to my ego it actually is that it takes three of us to equal one Mitchell?
I mean, that's totally fair. Mitchell's a lot. He's a lot to handle.
Oh, I know Mitchell is a lot to handle, and you know, a guy that's about to start his career, you know, going to law school.
He's I've worked 3 times as hard as him.
Well, but he's also about to be worth 3 of me on his own anyway, so I guess I can't complain too much.
There you go. We love you, Mitchell.
Certainly. Well, you know, kind of what I wanted to get, you know. As far as I go, you know, I'm the math guy, I'm the analysis guy, I'm the guy who wants to analyze the living shit out of pretty much anything I get my hands on. But I don't really have a huge history with video games, so to kind of start this off easy, I'd like to do a little, you know, easy lob so you guys can knock this one out of the park. But what are your... Could be from childhood, could be from, you know, something you played last night. What are your favorite games? Any console, any method whatsoever?
Nostalgia glasses on or off?
Okay, so I want to get to that later
Your
on.
interpretation.
So, okay, now, what I would like to say is let's start with nostalgia glasses on,
okay,
and then later on move into a little bit of realistic analysis. So let's put the nostalgia goggles on for a second and dive right in.
Nostalgia glasses on. Any game that has dinosaurs in it, I fucking adore because I love dinosaurs. There's a game on Steam right now called Primal Carnage Extinction. It's Call of Duty. Yeah,
it's called that.
It's Call of Duty, but dinosaurs versus people, and there's literally zero. There's no player base in it at all. There's normally one server that's full of people, and it's like 20, and then there's roleplay servers on there, which it's like you jump into like the team deathmatch server,
yeah,
and you can't fucking play with them because they're all dinosaur lovers too, and they've been playing this game like crazy. And then you jump in the roleplay, and you're just like, I don't know what to do, so I'm just gonna run around and be a raptor for a while. But like, that's like
running around and being a raptor is its own reward.
That's all you need, though. When you're a raptor, you don't need anything else in life. The animation, it's so it's just cool being a dinosaur.
Now I'm gonna interject just for a second for those of you who might be listening in on this. So just wanting to run around and be a raptor for a little bit might be the most Noah sentence that I've ever heard come out of his mouth. You know.
I mean, you gotta be at full Noah when he's talking about how much he loves dinosaurs.
Yeah, well, so. If I'm being completely honest, like, I was never a crazy sports kid. Like, all my buddies, in one way or the other, have their own sport. I wrestled back in high school. But other than that, like, go back to, like, grade school, kindergarten. Like, there was kids playing basketball, throwing around the football. You know, there was some sort of sport activity was happening on the playground. And little Noah was running around pretending to be a dinosaur.
The dinosaur life is the life for me. Right?
I wish. There's a couple decent dinosaur games out there, but I wouldn't say they're good without playing with a friend.
Well, and actually, so I hate to get a little bit off topic.
No, please,
I know
go ahead.
This is just generally a video game podcast, but I want to bring this up to you because you, of all people, would find this absolutely fascinating. So I was reading an article from National Geographic just last week, and we've kind of been doing a lot of, I say we as if I'm involved in the process, but scientists have been doing a lot of experimentation as far as reading DNA sequences go.
Right.
And we've gotten to a point with it where we can essentially read the entire genome, understand what the little bits and pieces of it, when put together, how they work, how they express different traits and everything.
Right.
We've now gotten to the point where not only can we read it, but we can code it. And so we're getting to a point where we can actually bring back extinct species, such as, you know, the woolly mammoth, or looking forward a little bit more into the future, we could actually make Jurassic Park a reality.
Well,
Raptors come to a pet store near you.
Dude, if I could have a pet raptor, good lord. If I could have my own Blue from Jurassic Park 3, but I have my discrepancies.
See, I don't know that you would, though, no. I think you'd look at that and say, you know what, now that it's right in front of my face, this may not be the best idea.
See, 98% of the population would do that, but not this man.
Well, see, I know that's not going to be a reality, because as much as I want to dream that that's going to be a possible, it's like, oh, we're at that point in our life where we've cloned, Dolly the sheep, we've cloned a sheep.
Sure,
But
yeah.
we're talking about a species of animal that's millions of years old, and it's been dead and deteriorating in the
We're
ground.
trying to clone woolly mammoths
It-
right
it-
now.
even
Just wait a few decades.
Even if we can pull that DNA out, you're gonna have like the most, like, not even a skeleton. Like let's say the DNA is a skeleton. You're gonna have like a pinky toe bone, and you have to put it
I really
all.
thought
Like
you were going for an
that
inbred
DNA
joke there.
deteriorates over time. It's not just gonna be there forever.
Well, see, normally yes, but in the case of the woolly mammoth, it's a little bit different
Hmm.
because their DNA is 99% similar to the Asian elephant. So what they're doing is now I'm not sure where the skeletal DNA,
Right.
whatever the blueprint is coming from, but there's only so many things that you realistically need to alter to make an Asian elephant into a woolly mammoth, and then insert it into an Asian elephant, and then all of a sudden it's giving birth to a fucking
woolly
woolly
mammoth.
mammoth.
Or just glue a rug onto its skin and then sell tickets. sell those tickets to the circus.
Someone-
Make money.
Someone's
hey,
done it.
Hey, I'm a man of science, but sometimes the rug is
I'm a man of showmanship.
all I'm saying is that I've glued a pen to a ruler and called it a science fair project in my day. I mean, like that's
I'm very proud of you.
Someone's got to keep those rug stores in business.
but
Yeah,
see,
great.
well, that's right. And people like me grow up to
Persians
do
depend
that
on
in
us.
science. Like that's
People like me grow up to staple rugs on elephants.
Well, that all I'm saying is the kid that like I don't know like staples a string to like a shoelace and calls it science. Like those people grow up to be in the real world.
Yeah,
and,
you're
and,
right.
and do real jobs eventually. And
Against all odds.
right. And maybe putting a rug on an Asian elephant is how that manifests itself.
Oh,
Everyone
shit.
needs a hobby.
Yeah, you're okay. So
Who's
yeah,
your favorite video
my
games, right?
favorite video games involve dinosaurs. I enjoy being dinosaurs. Let's get back to
Sure,
video
and
games.
sorry for that little
no, it was
digression there.
great.
But so Mark, what about you? What it tends to be your favorite?
So, I was actually doing a lot of thinking about this because I had a bit of free time, and by a bit of free time I mean I stopped sleeping. So I went back and I played all of Ocarina of Time, and I was playing a lot of The Witcher 3, so Nostalgia, Ocarina, OOT, and then favorite all time Witcher 3, and yeah, I've surpassed the need for sleep. I just drink beer, play video games, and meditate, and it's
You say
totally the same, right?
That's all you need in
You
life.
say you've surpassed the need for sleep, but yet you're telling me that I put you to sleep. So
Wait, wait, why did I say you put me to sleep?
just now, didn't you?
No,
Because I was talking forever. I tend to do that.
No, I
So
love
you
you
were-
talking
no,
forever.
no,
I didn't say
no,
put me
no,
to sleep,
no.
though. I said you were on a tangent. They're very different things. Tangents can be fun.
Well, I just assume people go to sleep when I go on a tangent. But anyway, so Porter, what about you? What's
This is
what's your
nostalgia
go-to?
glasses on.
This is nostalgia glasses on.
Okay.
For now, we'll transition into the more like realistic thoughts about
Uh-huh.
the games here in a little bit. But what about nostalgia goggles on? What's your favorite?
Nostalgia goggles on. I would definitely have to say Spyro.
Really? Didn't
Um,
expect that.
the first one I remember really was Spyro, not Ripto's Rage. My friends had Ripto's
Year
Rage,
of the
but I
Dragon?
Year of the Dragon.
Year
that was
of
the
the
one
Dragon.
I played.
That was the original in that trilogy, wasn't it, or was that the second one?
That was the third.
Year of the
one I
Dragon
played.
was the
Third one.
third. The original was just called Spyro the Dragon.
So I
Okay.
played Year of the Dragon. That's the first real video game I ever really remember getting into. A lot of my friends played Mario, and I never got into it as a kid. So I did Spyro. That
Right.
was my thing.
Yep, I feel that. I too played a lot of Spyro.
Well, yeah, you certainly didn't. You even had I don't know if it's still on there, but in your intro,
Oh,
you had
yeah.
that sound bit from Spyro, didn't you?
I'll say my original Orange Beanie Guy intro was Spyro running and then collecting a gem, just as a little throwback to nostalgia.
See, and when I first heard that, and when I was in like kindergarten through second grade, Spyro was like, that was my weekends. That was like whenever I was sick home from school, I was playing Spyro. I loved those games. And then, sophomore year, one of my roommates actually had an original PlayStation, and so I was able to kind of revisit Ripto's Rage. And so like listening to your first video that you included that in, I was like, son of a, where the hell have I heard that? And then it kind of, after a while dawned on me. I was like, holy shit, I'm listening to Spyro. That's awesome. And it was a nice little, if you want to call it an Easter egg,
Yeah.
at the beginning of your video that I personally really enjoyed, having it thrown in there. But anyway, so if I had to say nostalgia goggles on, for me personally, If you couldn't tell already, Spyro has got to be on top of that list for
yeah.
me. I would say most of the Mario and Sonic franchise.
Can you define which of the Sonic franchise? Because I have a guess of which ones.
Oh, yeah.
But
Well, or if I have a feeling of where you're going with this, which one in particular? Probably Sonic Adventure 2 Battles.
Yeah,
yeah,
The-
okay.
You know the ones where Sonic and Shadow go Super Saiyan.
Oh,
at the end of it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Wait,
Um,
have you beaten those?
I have, yeah.
Oh, damn.
I have.
I never.
They
beat them.
took that took like a few weeks of spending the night at one of my friends' houses to like one summer to actually beat it because it's
those are the best.
You get into what like hero mode and dark mode or whatever
yeah.
the hell it was.
Yeah.
After you've beaten the main story and then they somehow go Super Saiyan and rip off half of Japan lore.
Yep, pretty much.
So and the one that does it in particular, most people my age I would say are kind of split when it comes to the Mario franchise because you have the loyalists, at least for our age, that are the Super Mario 64.
Correct.
And then to me they kind of skip a generation and go straight to Galaxy. I personally hated Galaxy. I was a Super Mario Sunshine fan
Yeah.
when I was
Okay.
8 or so
Is
years
that the
old.
one with the little water purifier?
Yeah, Flood.
You're
Flood,
running
yeah.
around with the water purifier, and that's your favorite. Okay.
No, it was a good platformer. I'll defend him on that. It was a really good platformer for the GameCube, which overall was
I love the GameCube. It's a cube you can play games on.
That is you're not wrong, Mark. That is exactly
I
right.
know, I just dump a can of guns on it, and I'm good to go.
Well, can I tell you just for a second? This is actually nostalgia goggles off, looking at Super Mario Sunshine as like a realistic game. While I think the plot was kind of dumb, you've got a tourist cleaning up graffiti on an island.
Yeah.
That is on paper. That is exactly what that game was.
Exactly.
However, they brought in a totally new, unique piece of technology that they used as a plot point, and then they based an entire game around how to make that piece of technology relevant within the plot, within the levels, and then it even gave you on like the secret levels. It even gave you a great throwback to like the old school like Super Mario 64. The more like we all died like 4,000 times on each one of those.
Yep.
I actually going back to my my roommate when he was first playing it, in like second grade or whatever, he tried to contact Nintendo because he swore on his life that one of those secret levels were actually impossible.
Really?
He said he probably died like over
The
100
game
times
equivalent
on
of
this
Riding
one.
Santa?
Something like that, but he tried to contact Nintendo to tell them that they designed a level that was actually impossible.
They never wrote back. Interesting.
So, believe it or not, they never fixed the bug. they never. That level is still just as hard today, but it's somehow a little more beatable now that we aren't 8 years old.
Yeah. But yeah, going off that, it's really strange to go back to games where you literally thought something was impossible. Back on the previous podcast, for anyone that listened to it, me and Mitchell talked about the scene in Kingdom Hearts where you fight Riku once he got taken over by Ansem in the first game, where he's like, I am Ansem, the bringer of darkness, or whatever, and you have to fight him before you go into the door. As a child, I could not beat that level. I played it so much where I literally put it down for months and walked away from that because I was like, I can't beat it. And then I played it again as a more mature adult, I think around when Kingdom Hearts 2 came out, because I wanted to give it another shot and just kind of get the story back in my head. And then I fought Riku again, and I was like, oh, you're not impossible. I was just a child and didn't know much about video games.
Do you remember in Kingdom Hearts 2, when you go to the Pride Lands with Simba and shit?
Yeah.
There was the big boss of that one. Not the first time you go when you fight Scar. Second
Right.
time you go back and you
Yeah.
fight that big enormous ass Heartless.
Yeah.
I remember, you remember Bradley Browning.
Yeah.
He and I spent probably the entire trip going from from here to Myrtle Beach trying to beat that boss in Kingdom Hearts 2. We could not do it.
Jesus
Took
Christ.
us
You know what I kind of
almost 2 trips.
You know what I kind of thought was an interesting thing to realize as I was kind of thinking about, because with the release of the Insane trilogy with Crash Bandicoot within the last, week or two, whenever that was, I kind of got reflecting on some of the things I enjoyed as a kid and how bad of a gamer I actually was as a little kid. Because, and here, I realized kind of why. Especially the more, plot-driven games.
Right.
I'm trying to figure out how to progress the plot of a game, and I only learned to read maybe a year and a half prior to playing these games.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to immerse myself creatively into a whole world where I can barely even comprehend the characters.
Exactly.
And I think that's
Yeah.
why our perspective on it's probably changed so much.
Okay, especially with like RPG games.
Oh,
Like,
certainly.
I never played Final Fantasy, but I know for a fact if I did play it, I'd be mashing A because I'm like, I don't want to look at the dialogue. I want to get back to the fighting. It's
Nobody
I
wants
spend
to
a lot
look
more
at
time
the
reading talent trees now than I used to.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
definitely.
I'll put that there.
Oh
Yeah.
god, I love reading talent trees.
Oh my
I love
gosh.
reading codex entries.
Yeah, you do.
God.
Fucking completionist.
But yeah, no, going back to the Insane Trilogy, I feel like it shook a lot of people that were born in the 90s in the sense that it was like, oh, it's like a game from our childhood. Of course, it's going to be the same game. It's got updated graphics, and unfortunately, for a lot of game companies, that's all it takes to make games now is just updated graphics, new flashy,
Getting the
wooshy, wooshy.
microtransactions. Don't
Yeah.
forget those.
Well-
They're really important.
Well, luckily, with at least for now, I don't know if they're going to release any DLC, but they haven't done anything with the Insane Trilogy, which was just, I think it's just normal Crash Bandicoot, Wrath of Cortex, and then, or whatever the second one was called, and then Crash Bandicoot Warped. But, I personally haven't played it. I don't have a PS4, so I don't have the opportunity to play it. But
See-
I was not as hyped as everyone was about this game.
If you don't mind, I'll give my take on
Please,
the
go
Insane
right ahead.
Trilogy, because I've actually had a decent amount of exposure to it. So, a few things that they did right were, well, from a marketing standpoint, I thought it was absolutely brilliant.
Oh,
Because-
yeah.
Because as you know, you guys know, most people our age have the nostalgia goggles on. I mean,
Definitely.
the 90s kids have some of the strongest sense of nostalgia out of any generation that's ever lived. Very easy people to market to.
Right.
So they were like, okay, we're just going to throw this through the new graphics engine and sell it as literally the exact same thing, and everybody's going to buy it again, and it worked.
Yep, it
So
did.
it made them a whole lot of money off of really not a whole lot of work.
Right.
As far as I'm aware. I mean, I know a different studio made this one versus the original. There were a couple of different voice actors. I'm sure they were able to use a lot of the old sound bites from the old PlayStation games. But here's the problem that I personally have with the Insane Trilogy. Other than the fact that it's really not... Other than the graphics, it's really not it's not a different game. You know, like, I think a game that did, like, a remake really well was, like, Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire from a few years ago.
Right.
Because it was the same general plot as the original games, but they had a substantial amount of new content and new plot devices that kind of still made it feel like a new game.
Right.
And the...
It wasn't
It
just
sure
a carbon
did.
copy.
It wasn't, and the Insane Trilogy, as far as I can remember from the originals, as far as everything I've kind of experienced with it, it's very much the same game, except for a few things that are really frustrating. And these are more, you know, as the spatial analysis and this and that gets a little more complex as the graphics get better. Some of the game physics have gotten a little more frustrating,
Yes.
and if
I
there was
noticed that as
ever
well.
if there was ever a game that didn't need more frustrating game mechanics, I think the Crash Bandicoot franchise is sitting right on top of that list.
Precision platforming, I don't think has a huge love in the gaming community. But just to defend,
Platformers are dying, so the game community agrees with you.
I agree with that. But to defend Crash Bandicoot, I'm not sure that a company that redid this, but they did it from the ground up. There was no, like, let's bring over the skeleton or whatever from the last game and work from that. The only thing they did bring over was the generic skeleton from Crash Bandicoot's character model. Other than that, it was all new. They all did it by themselves. So I was like, okay, I'm expecting there to be a couple janky things. One of the ones I know people were furious about was an ice level in the new Insane Trilogy.
Yeah.
Where it was like a secret level where you had to, like, do it backwards, and it was like super precise because the ice physics weren't, spot on compared to the other one.
Right.
Which is where I can see, like, that's where nostalgia is going to hurt you because, like, there's tons of Let's Players out there. Like, I consider myself somewhat of a Let's Player, but I don't even have that many videos out there, but...
Have you ever heard the phrase, never meet your heroes?
No,
I feel like once you get too deep in nostalgia, you go back and you're beating your game, which is your hero, and then you're just kind of disappointed it's what it is.
No, yeah.
So you have to be careful about that.
I completely agree because there's people out there that played this game and tore it apart because they were like, "This isn't Crash Bandicoot." I'm like, no shit. It's a new game. They did it from the ground up. You can't expect it to be perfect. Like, if you want Crash Bandicoot, go play the original Crash Bandicoot. And like, I'm not saying it's a bad game. It made money, so financially, it was a success. It did really, really well.
Just because something makes money doesn't mean it's a good game.
Right, but I guess all I'm really trying to say is I'm going to defend the creators, if you will, because in today's day and age, there's a deadline. There's a time when stuff has to get done. There's no like, oh, we can like push this back.
Unless you're the fractured butthole, then you can just kick that down the road for 5 years.
I guess
I'm
you could
sorry,
say
I
that.
pre-ordered
Yeah.
that a year ago.
Well, and I'll kind of come to your defense a little bit as well, because Crash Bandicoot, I think it's about as good as a platformer realistically could be. You know,
Yes.
and I think because it's something to consider about platformers, in my opinion, is it's a genre that had to kind of make it through the Enlightenment, the video game Enlightenment. Where all no, I'm serious.
I love that term.
No, I'm serious.
stealing
though.
it. Thank you.
Because all of a sudden you've given the classic 2D scroller or the classic whatever, like you're jumping upwards onto platforms like the old Mega Man, Mario
Right.
and Donkey Kong, and you've given it a Z-axis.
Yep.
So you've taken something where the format doesn't even make sense for 3 dimensions, and you've given it a third dimension.
Mm-hmm.
And so naturally they're going to lag a little bit, and they're going to be a little bit difficult.
Slower.
They're gonna but they're going to be a little bit difficult from the vantage point of the player, because and one thing I've noticed is a lot of times you think you've made an accurate jump in Crash Bandicoot, and like the depth perception was completely off.
Oh, are you talking about the Insane trilogy?
Yes.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah, so just because of there's an element of depth that in a platformer realistically isn't meant to be there.
You're very right, but
Um,
just to kind of go harp on the lag, another thing, just trying to defend the Insane trilogy, with old games, you could not have everything rendered at once. It rendered as you progressed. So in Crash Bandicoot, you could not see miles down the road because the game literally could not render it. As you progressed, the game would continue to render. With the Insane trilogy, you pop in that level, you can see miles down the road. It's all rendered. The game's handling that entire space right there. It's not just pulling in those polygons as you progress. So the little bit of lagginess that would creep in every now and again is because everything's right there right now. In the whole game, the game's trying to hold that all together instead of taking it a step at a time.
That's actually a really fascinating point, because I actually didn't realize that at all. I mean, that makes sense because, in the original games you're not having to essentially construct an entire map.
Yeah.
You're essentially only having to limit the view into like one little frame that's being currently worked on. But
Do bear in mind though that the technology has also progressed significantly in regards to combating the lag as well.
That's true, but at the same time, it hasn't. We can say it's progressed a lot, but at least personally, I think the Insane trilogy should have gone back and not had everything rendered. I don't know if that's possible with the current system that they were working with,
Probably.
but like obviously, like there's some like even Skyrim, which is a massive game. It's not like boom, it's there. That game renders as you progress.
See, what's great about Skyrim?
They give you the skeleton.
What's great about
Yeah.
Skyrim is the graphics are like there's a bit of a trade-off. Either you can have everything look good and have problems, or you can have worse graphics and everything run fine. And with those two, I'd rather be more on the have things run the way they're supposed to trade-off. Like I like graphics, but also like not lagging having to start a level over.
well, and also a good thing about a game like Skyrim, where it's where you've got the original, then there's a tremendous amount of downloadable content. Am I right? Like I've never played Skyrim, but
the
that's
mods.
The
that's
mods,
all the
yeah.
mods.
Yeah, but what that allows you to do is that allows you to release the game itself, and then over the course of, because that's a game that came out, many,
Yeah.
like 5 or 6
Back
years
when
ago
yeah.
now.
2011.
Yeah, so like 6 years ago now. And people are still playing it on a fairly regular basis. That gives you that much time to kind of work on the little like lagging issues and the faulty programming that kind of fill in the gaps as you go along, as opposed to spending a decade making a
I
game.
mean, Skyrim it's Bethesda, right?
Yes,
they're
it
always
is.
glitchy, no matter how much that they're there. I love them. The games are great, but they're also part of their games is like just
They've
glitching through
become a
stuff.
meme.
They've become the meme, the ultimate limit.
But I mean, memes are made out of love. I mean, not always,
And
but
they
that one
recognize
was
it
made
as
out of love.
being an
Yeah,
ass.
but that's not
Well,
always.
sure.
Yeah.
So, I think we're actually getting into a great transition point here into my next question.
All right.
Because
All right.
we're talking a lot about what makes games good, what makes games bad, what problems that there are with games.
bad,
But
ugly.
the question that I want to pose to you guys, because I've definitely got my own set of opinions on this, are what makes good game design? Not a good game, what makes good game design?
May I jump in
Absolutely.
to answer this? There is not a formula for a good game design because in my mind, there's like 3 different ways a game can be good. and this is not don't include graphics on this. There are the mechanics of a game. If a game has good mechanics, I don't care what I'm playing. I'm really going to enjoy it. For example, there's a multiplayer game called Nidhogg. It's like an 8-bit, like super pixely, like the most like Atari-esque looking thing ever. You're just a dude with a sword and you fence, and all you can do is raise that sword up and raise that sword down.
And this was released recently?
Fairly recently,
Okay.
maybe a couple years ago. And the goal is just to stab the other fencer, or throw your sword and stab him, and run to the opposite side of the screen. And you sprint as far as you can until you get to the end goal. But that's it. It's stab, jump, run. And it's some of the most fun I've had with my friends in a long time. It's so high-paced and like adrenaline-inducing because it's all about just trying to get the guy and stab him. So you're sitting there fencing a friend. You'll do like a backflip, throw the sword, they'll block it, then you have to punch him. Like essentially there's 3 buttons you use.
Sure.
You're using the analog stick, you're using a jump button, and you're using your sword button. That's it. And it has like in my eyes, those are beautiful mechanics, and that's something I will always pick up and play if anyone's around me. And I personally think it's a great way to introduce people to games because it's not about the graphics, it's about the game itself, like the actual playing of it.
The thing about that is there actually is something mildly formulaic about what you just described. You know, no, hear me out. I'm not saying that in general there is a formula for good game design,
Right.
because I agree with you in that typically there's not, because you know, you can't make something work for one thing and then the exact same thing work for a little 8-bit pixelated, you know, game about throwing swords at people.
Mm-hmm.
However, I think the brilliance behind what you just described as being as satisfying as it is a game that is giving you a very simple objective.
Mm-hmm.
It's giving you the way and the means to execute the objective,
Mm-hmm.
and then the only way you fail is if somebody else executes it better than you do.
Yeah.
So it keeps the objective simple. You understand the objective
Mm-hmm.
very clearly, very immediately. You understand how to execute it,
Mm-hmm.
and then you essentially have to live with the outcome.
Right.
I think it's very because
Or die with the outcome.
Yeah.
it's honest to its own format. It's transparent about its own format, and then there's a payoff, good or bad, pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's kind of what makes something so simple like that very successful and very satisfying.
Right. I'll completely agree with you on that. To kind of rattle off the last 2 things, like I was saying, there's
Sure.
the mechanics of the game. It doesn't matter how simple or fantastic it is. If the mechanics are good, I'm going to love it. There's immersion, which I know you wanted to touch upon this later, but
Sure.
in my eyes, I don't see God of War being a great game. I think it has...
Before we break the God of War barrier, could I throw 2 cents in on what makes a game great?
No, we're not going to delve into it. I just
yeah.
want to touch on like
Yeah,
the
let
thing.
him finish his other points, and then we'll definitely go
Yeah.
that direction.
I just want to say, like, God of War has perfect immersion. Like, you feel like that crazy Spartan warrior. You have waves of people coming at you. There's really not much, mechanically speaking, that you have to do. It's bash square and bash triangle. It's a simple combo. It's square, square, triangle. There's plenty of others, but in my eyes, that's almost all that you really need to beat that game. But the music, the way you're running around, the animation, just like the Greek mythology all around it, like it's very polished. I guess I should say that. It's very polished to make you feel like you're in that world. Whereas like, I don't know, Super Mario 64, like, I don't feel immersed in that game. I'm just like, oh, get from point A to point B, I did a good job. It's like that satisfactory, I got 100% on my test.
It's a very linear, like the game itself took you on a tour of the world by the hand,
Right.
and you were forced to follow.
Exactly.
It's not you exploring it.
Yeah, like when I played God of War, I was like, I am the God of War. Like, I'm in here and I'm
you are.
experiencing it, and it's fun pretending to be someone else for a while. So I really enjoyed.
It's fun to wear the ashes of your loved ones.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, it's in that sense, immersion I think can make a great game.
Yeah.
And the last thing, which I guess it kind of goes hand in hand with immersion, I was gonna say, and games can do this right or wrong. It's having blank slate characters, and it's almost 50-50. Where it's like,
What exactly do you mean a blank slate character, if I might ask?
Basic RPG stuff.
yeah, exactly.
I'm thinking like a Link where it doesn't really talk.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, here's this basic character, apply yourself to him.
It's where it's like the almost like your avatar within that world
Exactly.
that you're exploring.
It's
Okay.
just like, so like whatever RPG it is, like with Mark said, Link, like he doesn't talk a whole lot, so you can kind of, you can put yourself on him. Like, okay, I can be this guy. He doesn't say a lot.
See, I prefer developed characters to blank slate because there's more. To me, it's all about immersion, and I agree with you with that. But what makes me, what generally speaking makes a game great, is the little details. Is the player rewarded for testing out the system, doing this, doing that? The little details about a character gets you to care, and as soon as you care about that character, you're in. That's that. It's your game.
Yeah, I agree on that.
It's all about the
statement
details
as well.
for me. That's what it separates. I mean, it already has to be a good game, but going from good to great, little details.
Yeah, but go ahead. Anything?
Well, let's see. Did you reach the end of your list? Because I'd like you to finish up on that.
Well,
I want to go back to the details as soon as you get.
Yeah,
finished
well,
with that.
no. Basically, if it's got good,
Shoot my
if it has good mechanics, it's awesome. If I can be immersed in the game and I can put myself in that world, not necessarily the character, I'm way into it. And again, 50-50. If someone has a blank slate character and I can put myself in their shoes correctly, it honestly kind of depends on, I think, the other characters in the game and how you interact with them. Then I think a game can be good. But I mean, there's tons of other little things, but I think those are the big three, personally.
And I definitely agree with you. I think that's about as close as we can get to a realistic recipe that's kind of break through the walls of the various media, the various game styles. But I wanted to, Mark, I think you made an excellent point about going into the details. However, I did want to say one thing about that, and I think you could tell by the expression on my face that the kind of the hamster wheel in my head was turning. Mark, you're a guy that's kind of dabbled with creative writing in the past. I know that,
sir.
and actually I have as well, as you know. And I'm sure you've heard the phrase, and I'm gonna misquote it, but it's the idea
Only
where.
the gist. I'm
Well,
terrible.
sure,
Just the gist.
sure. Well, it's don't describe the rifle over the fireplace in Chapter 1 if you're not gonna fire it by Chapter 4. The whole idea where
It's not a movie, though. See, if for different mediums, I agree with you, but medium based, you can have a game where a player can, if you can accomplish your objective 8 different ways, that's awesome. Like you're only gonna maybe play it twice. You'll only do 2 of them.
Well, let me expand on what I'm saying a little bit, because I get that it's a different media. I get that the style is much different, but also the way it's executed is very different. So my whole point behind that is, if you're going to have a tremendous amount of detail in a game, that's wonderful. However, I would like it within a certain margin of error. I would like that detail to mean something to the game and the world that they've created that you're now a part of. And again, this is just, I get that this is realistic. This is what would happen in real life if you were to, I don't know, if you're Link and all of a sudden that you're coming across some village and talking to the random villagers.
Yeah.
But it's great that I can communicate with the villagers, but 99% of those interactions don't mean anything. Like, it's some guy talking about, I don't know, his son that, decided to become a sailor one day.
Yeah.
Or
you don't
something
have,
like
You don't
that.
have to catch the chickens if you don't want to. That's the beauty of it.
Well, and I agree with that. However, the problem that I've sometimes had with, let's use these open world games, or relatively let's call them semi-open world games as an example.
All right.
There are times where it's not always obvious what I'm supposed to be doing right now. And I think a game developer needs to be aware of those moments in the game where they're not as plot driven, where it's like, okay, somebody might be a little bit lost in the shuffle here in the moment. Let's put a couple of villagers here and there that kind of I don't know, they all seem to be talking about the same dragon that lives up on the cliff. Maybe I should go check out the cliff.
Right.
I would say Skyrim does a good job of that, even though Skyrim counts as a more open world, full open world sort of game. Excuse me. Anyway, Skyrim does a good job of either putting things in your path, they call them radiant events, I believe they were called, but they were little villagers, or you see a group of bandits randomly just out in the middle of the world, and so if you were lost, you would eventually run into something that could help at least guide you to a big city or a new quest, or something along those lines, maybe. Particularly if you were lost.
I feel like you could solve that just with your little menu and have here's your main quest. It's go. It's here's this text, and then here's the red part, which is what you need to know where you're supposed to go.
But that's the thing, and kind of going against what you all said, because a major game just came out that literally has nothing of what you all said, and
Which game is this?
it's Breath of the Wild.
Yep.
Oh, it's
People,
today. It literally does have the red text. It's exactly what I was thinking about.
like that tells you what to do. 'Cause
Yeah.
I was gonna say in that game, I assumed from like when you started it, like, it's like okay, you wake up, you're this dude that just kind of woke up in the cave. You walk out in the world. There's an old man that's like, oh, here's the mechanics, sort of, and then it's like go.
That was kind of mine, and I'm actually glad that you guys brought that up because I forgot the name of it, but I specifically wanted to mention that game. That's the new Zelda game for the Nintendo Switch, correct?
Now,
Correct.
My friend go out of town and borrow his Wii. I'm finally playing it. It's
Is it?
I'm
is it
a
worth it?
fan.
Really?
Yes,
Okay,
sir.
I need to.
It's
I need to give a look at it.
graphically and from what I'm hearing about like the way the game plays itself, to me it's almost been worth saving up for a Nintendo Switch just for that game. But that was kind of my understanding was that it was the first completely open world Zelda game.
Yes, it is. Which is
Except
great.
for the very first one, because in the first one they didn't tell you. You're just like, you're a dude with a sword, go, and that was all you knew.
Take this. It's dangerous to go alone.
Exactly. It's dangerous to go alone. Take this. There was no when you jumped in there. It was like you're a dude with a sword. Figure shit out. And like you can say that was the first open world, but I mean,
I don't consider
I was like,
I'm gonna go with Breath of as the. See, what? So literally,
Modern
you go
open
to your-
world.
you go to
That's
your
what I was
menu.
about to say.
There's like 4 different quest slots. One of them, like quest categories. One of them's main quest, and you go onto it. You have multiple different main quests at the same time. It's like, meet this guy at meet the Zora Prince at Indigo Bridge, and so there's a bunch of flavor text around that. But they have like the important thing, like the location in red. It's literally like red block letters, so it stands out. Like, that's a good solution. I think.
not to
It's a
throw.
bit holding your yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm done. I'm done.
Not to throw any spoilers out there, but there's essentially whatever spoiler.
dies.
Spoiler alert.
Wait, really?
No, shut up, Porter.
Spoiler alert, you're actually playing as Link and not Zelda.
So there's like 4, let's call them Titan creatures that you can, I suppose it's like cure. You can make them help you in the game, and they ultimately help you with Ganon in the end.
And
And
when,
when,
ignore them entirely.
and-
Go fight Ganon with 3 hearts.
Yeah.
It's open world.
and that's what I'm saying. Like, you don't gotta go save those animals that will help you, like, bring down Ganon's life. You literally can just, like, go talk to the old man. And he's like, Ganon's in that town. And you can be like, okay, and just go take on Ganon right there.
And
If you're
get wrecked.
Yeah, if you're confident enough, you can go and do that. Which I think is nice in the game because it's like, this is the world. You're in it now. Like, you're not progressing it. This shit's all happening right now.
Sure.
And you have to react to it whichever way you see fit. Which I think was really cool.
Well, I
about
think it's
that
brilliant.
game.
I think it's absolutely brilliant.
Oh, yeah.
And it's Nintendo Switch has been very innovative as far as the new technology they put in it. I mean, as far as like the sensory things and the way that you operate the different games and the different mechanics within the game, I think are on a whole nother level.
I completely agree. I think it's a game that's gonna change a lot of other developers because Nintendo's always been an innovative company. They're always
For better or worse.
for better or for worse.
Sure.
They've definitely had their falls, but they're not afraid to step outside the. Is it proverbial? Is that the right word?
The box, no.
Yeah, they're not afraid to step outside the box. They're not afraid to try something new. And in this circumstance, a game they've been working on for, I want to say it was 3 years. It worked. Everything that led up to this game had really worked, and it kind of sounds like they took a chapter out of Ego Raptor. If anyone hasn't seen it, there's a dude on YouTube that his name is Ego Raptor, and he rants about how Zelda really fucked up, and it almost verbatim seems like they took a chapter out of what he said and
Well, and
worked around it.
I was actually going to mention that at some point in this podcast, but it's funny because I think it's very obvious from listening to the his rants on the Sequelitis series on YouTube is he's definitely a purist. You know,
Yeah.
he's a fan of the original, you know, like, and he actually makes the point, you know, Zelda was really one of the first games back before you had 3 dimensions where it had a selective Z-axis, where
Right.
things could kind of occupy the same space by going over you, but you couldn't necessarily, like, jump or go upwards, if that makes sense.
Was it Link's Awakening or something
Yeah,
like that?
yeah,
Okay,
that was exactly right. Where basically, like, there could be something like flying, like a story above me, but on the first floor I could swing my sword
Yeah.
and somehow be hitting the thing that's like,
above you.
but I could still
Yeah.
walk underneath it.
Yeah.
You know, there is a Z-axis there, but it's a selective Z-axis.
Yes.
But
It
it's
asks you who you know here before it lets you through. It's
well,
selective.
and I think the point that he really kind of skims over that I think totally changed the perspective on what he had to say about it was once you put things in 3 dimensions, things are bound to get 100% different. And the whole purpose of the game, the mentality behind the game is different. Because when you give it 3 dimensions, they're doing their best to kind of put you in the character's shoes. You know, and he rants a lot about how the puzzles have changed. And actually, if you don't mind, like that's actually a point that I had written down here.
Please go ahead.
Is games that are puzzle based. Because in the original, the more traditional Zelda games, you walk into the room and you automatically have all of the information about the room at once because you can see everything.
Right.
But in the newer 3-dimensional games, you walk into a room and you can't do that. But I think he sees that as a negative. I see that actually as a positive, because if I myself am in the shoes of the explorer, of the hero, I'm going to walk into a dungeon room and I'm not going to know everything about the room simultaneously.
Yeah.
So that forces me to explore every nook and cranny and really do my best to thoroughly understand my surroundings just so I can progress myself.
Right.
So I personally, even though that is more tedious, it is a little more frustrating. I personally see that as just smart game design.
Games that reward exploration are great games.
I absolutely agree with that.
Yeah, I'll completely agree with that, because you're right that you were saying that he was a bit of a purist, and that kind of you said that perfectly to kind of go against that, and I agree with what y'all said earlier. Exploration, I think, is the key in a game, because it's like, why would I want to play a game where they're just like, here you go, here's everything, like, just kind of do what we say.
Well, just because it's really not like realistic anymore.
Yeah.
But what I'll do here is I'll give what I feel are my criteria for good game design, or at least the kind of how to judge if you can check these things off. I think you've done a pretty good job.
Okay. Go ahead.
So, what I think makes a game objectively good. First of all, how good does it look compared to other games that are its contemporaries? You know, from a graphical standpoint, from a physical standpoint, you know, is the product that was made on par with other things being made at the same time? The second thing is, are you able to explore? Actually, I shouldn't really even say that. How well can you use the world that the gamers have created? Because that's going to mean different things depending on what the game is.
Are you saying in ways that you can interact with the world?
Yes,
Or the way it's like-
yes, but I'm being careful with how I phrase that, because that's going to mean different things in different styles of games.
Right.
So essentially, how good is that relationship between the environment they've created and the game they've created, if
Okay.
that makes more sense.
Yeah, it does.
You know, is the environment relevant to the game that they've created?
Okay.
I guess is a better way of putting that. And that actually flows really well right into my third point, is the environment created in a way that encourages interacting to learn by yourself how to progress through the game. Like, there needs to be a manner of here's how to play.
Yeah.
You know, when you're
A
first starting
tutorial.
off. A tutorial, right. You need to know what the rules are of the
If
game.
it's straight Dark Souls and you don't know the controls and you just get wrecked. Like, I mean,
Well, certainly.
If you want to push through, you can, but you're gonna lose people.
Yeah.
You
Well,
need
sure.
You need something. You need like something.
But there needs to be some kind of methodology behind how can this player teach himself or herself how to play the game.
I agree with that almost completely, because I think there are certain games like I talked about earlier, Nidhogg. Like, it's like a very bare bones game. So you look at this game and you're like, okay,
Games are real.
there can't be that much complexity to it. So, like, it's like, all right, what can I do? And you start bashing buttons. You're like, I can jump, I can stab, I can move. All right, let's do this.
Right.
But in a sense of like in that game, it's like, okay, duh, like, it's a super like simplistic game. Obviously, there's not going to be a lot to know about it. But let's say a game like I don't know, because I haven't played this yet. Let's say like a game like Bloodborne. Like,
Yeah,
you jump into
yeah.
that game, which is I want to say it's like I don't know if it was like a spiritual successor to Dark Souls.
It is.
Or if it-
I wish
okay.
Ben was here. He'd talk for about an hour about
yeah,
it.
really. But
One was a good game.
yeah.
Well, we can check off the list that we did in fact mention it for
Yeah,
him, though.
you're
We can-
welcome, Ben.
You're welcome, Ben.
Ben,
We fucking
for
talked
you.
about Bloodborne for you. Congratulations.
But no, with a game like that, I'd understand like a hunter coming to you and be like, "Oh, hello, fellow hunter. Like, come with me. Like, I'll navigate you through this treacherous area." So it's like, okay, I woke up in this world. Like, how do I do this? This hunter's like guiding you, and then some creatures attack you. You watch this hunter fight the creature, dodging it and hitting at the precise moments. You're like, okay, so that's what I need to do, but it's not telling you the button combination. And then later on, that hunter, let's say, gets killed by a bigger creature. Then you're like, oh shit, I need to do what that hunter did, and I need to start, clicking the buttons and figuring out what I need to do. And once you like,
Didn't you just get eaten? Don't you not want to do exactly what he
Well,
did?
no, well, actually,
Touche.
Here's what I think might be even to take that one step further, a more interesting way to do that is start off your hunter somewhere, by himself out in the middle of the woods. Like, this is before another hunter or another character even comes into this guy's path. You've not been given any explanation for what the buttons do or how they work. You've not been given any knowledge of how to use whatever weapons might be in your inventory. You get attacked by something that you are 100% guaranteed not to succeed against. And you're given the chance to
But die
essentially do it the
immediately,
wrong way. Well, not die. Well, then that's when, at that point, that's when the hunter comes in and say, you fucked this up. Here's how you can do this better. Do what I do.
I think
Oh, I thought it was like you're fighting the final boss to start the game, you get wrecked, and you revive later.
Yeah.
That's like a Mega Man strategy, right?
I think if I'm
Yes.
if I'm correct, because I've watched the game, I haven't played it. I don't have the newest console. That is actually how they teach you in Bloodborne. Is like you're walking through a building. I think the correct term is a lycanthrope, which is like a wolfish looking
Werewolf, yes.
a werewolf. Yeah,
reckon
a lycanthrope
ly-
comes
lycan-
out there, and if you don't know how to play, he wrecks your shit. And
Yeah.
you're just like, well, what the fuck? No one told me, and it teleports you to essentially like a purgatory-esque area. Maybe not
I do hate when
purgatory.
you start a game
it's
with an unwinnable
complicated.
fight. A very
Yeah.
hard fight, okay, but an unwinnable fight just pisses me off.
Yeah, anyways, they teleport you to this purgatory, and if I'm correct, again, I haven't played this. They kind of like help you out as to what to do. I don't know if they give you a health boost or they show you what to do, but that's kind of like your tutorial. It's not someone being like blatantly being like, "Hey, this is what you do," but it's like, "Oh, you died. That sucks, man. Like,
No,
you
it's
try
a very-
doing this."
It's a very great. Do you know your shit? Because if you do, and you're gonna be able to beat the werewolf, and if not, then you get the tutorial.
Pretty much.
Okay. And that being said, I've heard fantastic things from Bloodborne, and I would love to play that
I've
game
heard it slurped up and down the street.
as soon as I pick up a console.
The last thing that I think kind of can make or break a game, and this is more focused on story-driven, plot-driven games, because we were talking about the old platformers earlier, and that is very objective-based. It's like I don't even care that somebody got kidnapped. I don't even care that
Princess is
Dr.
in the castle.
Cortex is gonna like enslave the human race or whatever the hell Cortex is doing in Bandicoot, but. That's very like, okay, I don't care about that. I want to smash boxes and get to the end of the level.
Yeah.
I want to do that over and over again until the credits roll. But in the more story-driven games, the ones that are getting...
Sounds like your college experience.
Hey! Well...
damn it,
hey,
Mark.
man, as I like to say, I am living proof that C's do in fact get degrees.
Son of a bitch. You're saying, Anthony.
I was... Okay,
No,
so...
no, let it marinate.
In the more popular games that are much more theatrical, much more plot-driven, much more into character development and world development, to me, what's going to make or break that is how good of a job they do about making you care about the story.
Amen.
Yeah.
Because I think there's a good... And I just have... And these are going to be very, like, mediocre at best examples of this, I think. But I think a good example of how this is done well is how most of the Call of Duty games kind of immerse you and then kind of give you the story bit by bit as you're playing.
Wait, has anyone ever cared with the Call of Duty story? It's
I'm not.
show up,
I'm not. Well,
you shoot
okay.
some guys. There's explosions near you.
A lot
you survive every time.
A lot of people actually do.
You
A lot
shoot
of
some
people
guys.
actually do care about the objective
yeah,
and about the story, especially with Modern Warfare.
Oh,
Yeah,
that one. Yeah, there's like 20 of them. I'm talking general.
Yeah,
I'll give you Modern Warfare.
I haven't played any of the new ones per se, but I know for a fact, like, the World at War
I thought people just
Call of
go out
Duty
and shoot
game.
Zombies and fight each other.
Oh, hell no. Like, the World War II I thought was awesome.
Oh, it was
It
wonderful.
was the one
Wonderful.
Call of Duty where everyone didn't have a fucking automatic gun, and I'm like, I'm way into this.
Whereas now it's all Destiny and Halo.
Yeah,
is
I mean-
essentially what
Yeah,
Call of
you're
Duty
right.
has become.
But no, I'll agree with you on that.
Yeah.
Because there were certain parts about the game because people buy Call of Duty for the multiplayer or whatever. But
Sure.
I can distinctly remember a point in Modern Warfare 2 where I got up and yelled at my TV, and this isn't spoilers anymore. If you haven't played this game, it sucks to be
What
you.
is wrong with you?
But there's a scene where you get betrayed and Ghost, the guy with who wore like the skeleton mask,
Yeah,
gets
yeah.
shot in the head. And you're like, no! And then they light you on fire, and I'm just like, fucking, they killed Ghost. What the fuck? He was the coolest character in that game. Like,
I'm the Punisher now. I'm gonna put
Right.
that skull on my chest.
exactly. And like after that, because I loved the way Ghost talked, acted, whatever that entire game. As soon as that event occurred, I'm like, everyone's dead. Like, I don't care who it is. Like, I'm on a warpath now.
Right.
And like a small event like that really pushes you forward, I'm all for.
Well, right. Well, and see, that's exactly kind of what my point was. You had the reaction because the game did a decent enough job at getting you to care about the story and the
Right.
characters that are in it. And now, this my counter example might be a little bit, met with some controversy. However,
Oh, yeah.
I think
Go.
an example of, and I'm not talking about the originals. I'm talking about some of the newer ones. An example of how this is not done well, I think, is how Assassin's Creed goes about
See,
it.
I think Modern Warfare and Assassin's Creed are the same, where you have, like, here's your general plot, which is roughly the same every time. Here are a couple new widgets, like, a new gadget, new gun, and then it's the same story. I mean, Assassin's Creed is really up its own butt at this point with the story.
I've got a specific. I'll let you guys finish your points, but I've got a very specific reason why I have it listed as a counterexample.
Please go ahead and, unless Porter has anything to say, list what you will have to say, because I have not played any of the
Sure.
Assassin's
I mean, I could
Creeds.
drop a deuce on Assassin's Creed for a while, so let's hear it.
Yeah.
So the reason why I say now, that being said, I'm not saying the story itself is bad. So I want to clarify. I think the story behind Assassin's Creed is actually fascinating. It's remarkably creative, and they've done a very good job of crafting the lore behind it. However, where I think they kind of failed the game player is, I feel like I fucking watched the entire Lord of the Rings trilogy by the time I'm allowed to play the game for the first time. They do so much like cutscenes and videos and movie scenes that it's like I forget I'm playing a fucking video game, and I feel more like I'm watching a movie series. And I get impatient.
Yeah.
And I don't like when a game makes me impatient because it won't let me play.
What bothers me is when, and I understand it, this is America, making a buck is on high with God, it's fine. What pisses me off is when you can't release a game every single year and expect to keep making good games. You're just milking the franchise at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I haven't bought the last couple Assassin's Creeds
Well, and see, that's
because I gave up on it. Like, I gave up on Call of Duty.
Right, and in my mind, that while that is a good point and very valid point, I think that's a justification. It's not saying it's making an excuse for why the game could potentially be worse.
There's a million ways to get
Well,
Alright.
let me throw a more modern example, because I don't know what the
It's
last
modern.
Assassin's Creed was. I mean, Assassin's Creed's fairly
not
modern.
Unity. It was
Brotherhood?
No.
Oh, well, think of the
No,
one
you
Britain.
idiot.
The one
I don't know. I
Britain.
feel like there were pirates
Yeah.
at one point. I
Yeah.
don't know.
Black
That's my
Flag,
point. No one knows
Unity,
anymore.
and
What are they? They lost their identity.
yeah.
But a more modern example of what you were saying, where like games make me impatient, I believe, if I'm naming the correct last game in the series, was Uncharted 4: A Thief's End.
no.
Is that the last one that came
Four is
out?
the most recent one, right?
Yes.
Okay, in that one, I don't have a console. I watched a lot of gameplay. I felt like I was watching a movie. Not in the sense that, like, it's like, oh, this game is, like, so, like, I'm just way into it. It was that every 10 minutes, there was, like, a 20-minute cutscene. And they were good. Like, I'm not denying they were bad.
Very
like, it was
well
really,
made, very-
like,
yeah.
I have a
like,
question to pose.
hold on 1 second. Like, I was really into it. Like, the cutscenes were awesome, but at the same time, it's like, where's the gameplay? Like, the story's great. I'm not going to deny, like, I really enjoyed the story of Uncharted, but when does it become a movie and when does it stop being a game?
Right.
In that kind of sense.
Right, and that's kind of exactly sums up my beef with Assassin's Creed. You know, I do think they are good games. They obviously a very successful franchise and everything, but that's kind of my beef with the way they went about telling the story.
Yeah.
So my question for the cutscenes, and I want your opinions, good or bad.
Sure.
If you throw in interaction like a la Resident Evil 4, like you go in, there's a cutscene, and then you have to press a button to save your character, or now you're mashing A to outrun a boulder. Like, if you had to do interactive cutscenes, that make it better, make it worse? Your
No,
thoughts?
it makes it worse.
No,
I-
No one likes
I don't
interactive
think it makes
cutscenes.
it
I like
better.
them.
I know. I do not like quick time events. Like, okay, if
Yeah,
you're
you're right.
God
if
God
you're,
of War is
hold on,
another famous one
I'll
that
say,
does that.
If
a
you're
lot.
gonna halt the gameplay and make me watch a scene so I can like get pulled into the story, I'm putting down the controller. I'm listening. I'm into the story. And if some fucking zombie comes to find me in the game's like mash square really fast, I'm like, oh shit! And I'm trying to pick up my controller and mash square like that. What the fuck, game? You told me to stop
should've
playing the
been
game.
fair.
No, the game told
nah.
me to stop. It said watch this scene and learn about the story, so I did that.
That's what you
Why you
said.
can make me panic and
That would
mash
actually
square?
Hey, can I tell you what the absolutely the hands down, not even debatable, greatest cutscene of all time, where you're like allowed like the interactive cutscenes or whatever it is
Yes.
of all time.
Yes.
In I believe this was it was either God of War 2 or 3 where you get to interactively fuck Aphrodite.
I know that scene. I know exactly what you're talking about. God of War 3.
Well, and the thing was, like, that obviously came completely out of left field. I was like, surely I'm not about to, like, mash square to fuck Aphrodite. That is exactly what was about to happen.
Selling porn to kids.
Oh, you're so right.
And so after playing that cutscene 15 times, I then, you know, I left her chambers and continued with the rest of the game.
I resonate with that so much.
I just keep a save pre-Mass Effect romance scene.
Hey, all I'm saying is there's multiple save files, so you didn't have to save over your game. You could save at different points in the game.
I feel you.
That's all there is to it.
Actually, I'm pretty sure that point in the game was a save point. I saved so many fucking times, like I saved the shit out of that part of the game.
Shit.
It was my PlayStation was very well aware that I'd spent a substantial amount of time in Aphrodite's quarters in that. I believe it was God of War 2, unless I'm mistaken.
I believe
it
was either 2 or 3.
There was, I think there was like a pool scene in 2, and then like in the third one, it was like you're mashing square, and there was like 2 of Aphrodite's servants that were on the side that you had to like stare at while you mashed square. If I'm correct.
Oh, that's correct.
Yeah, that's the scene I'm thinking of.
Okay,
Because you know, unfortunately, because this isn't, just straight up porn.
Yeah, well,
is you can't watch whatever Kratos is doing to poor Aphrodite.
And dare I say, taking the nostalgia glasses off, it's painfully awkward to go back and watch that scene because basically the camera's like, okay, we're not going to show you sex because it's a video game, and it puts it on the 2 random servant girls, and they're kind of like awkwardly jigging over in the corner.
I know.
Like they're not dancing, they're not touching. They're just kind of like
in the background. Will Smith is singing "Get Jiggy with It."
Well, and what's even better about that is it's done in like the early to mid 2000s graphics where all the like standstill characters were kind of like moving a little bit. You know,
exactly.
It's like if you ever saw like Spyro, if he was standing still, like his head was kind of bobbing, and like that was essentially the God of War version of what I was watching.
I almost fell over. But no, what were we talking about?
Cutscenes.
There we go. No, cutscenes.
Oh god.
Oh god.
How fun was that tangent though? That was speaking of nostalgia,
Anthony,
guys.
I like your tangents. They don't put me to sleep.
Yeah, there we
I
go.
like those tangents.
Oh, that was nice. Okay,
I'll be thinking of that tangent before I go to sleep. But anyway, hey, listeners, I apologize for that one. That was definitely not.
Don't
joke,
listeners, go on YouTube right now. Look up God of War 3 Aphrodite.
I want your opinion in the comments if it was or was not the greatest cutscene of all time.
I don't know about that.
Inquiring minds want to know.
I don't even think it's disputable. I think that because you have to know at some point a developer was like, "What if we let him fuck her?"
If you ever think you can't sell something, remember someone walked into a Hollywood boardroom and sold a tornado full of sharks. So yes, you can.
Oh my god.
Oh, I know that game actually.
A game dev was just like, what if we let him fuck her?
Well, and I just love how because they had to program in
living.
like triggering responses for you to press different buttons, and you're kind of like mentally guessing what he's doing at the time.
I'm sure that was a little awkward for the game devs to animate that because it seemed to.
No, it wasn't. They were rubbing one out too.
No, that shit takes a long time to.
I'm sure
that little jig you were watching in the corner takes a fucked long time to animate.
They spent 3 months letting the user fuck Aphrodite, and they're just doing it in code and design and all that stuff. They're spending 3 months coding you fucking Aphrodite.
I love commitment to a good effort.
Cheers. I'll drink to that. Hold
Not a
on.
beer.
Cheers. There we go. That was me clinking beers with myself. Where are we next on this?
Yes. Okay. So
sheet we
that was my last point on what I think makes a
We do care
game.
about story. I think we got there.
Yes.
Yeah, we do care about story. I kind of want to revisit a topic that we touched on briefly earlier, and that was with the way you go about exploring a world.
Mm-hmm.
And because in my mind, I see a game like Zelda and a game like God of War. They're very similar games.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I think like God of War could almost be like the M-rated version of Zelda, essentially.
Okay.
A lot of the concepts carry over, except like you're not the entity you're fighting is a little bit different in nature. But the way that you go about like solving a puzzle to unlock a door, to finding a key, to unlocking another door, it's very like cue the music. I think there's a lot of similarities between the two, and the beef I think that a lot of people have, because I do think God of War does it a little bit better than Zelda does, in my opinion, with the way they go about like the dungeon puzzle solving, methodology. Just because I you know, and I see the look on your face, Mark, and it's definitely not a good one. But to me, I feel like Zelda forces you to do a little bit too much backtracking. You know, or it's like you almost forget like what the hell this key could have possibly gone to, or like I just feel like, and I'm kind of contradicting myself because I say that's exactly what it would be like if you were there in real life.
Yeah, I was gonna say, to kind of go back on what you said earlier.
Sure.
It's like you want
You're
to
welcome
be
to have a complex
like,
opinion.
yeah, you
to
want
make the world go round.
you want to walk in there and be like, oh, I don't know, but then like you said, like for me, what jumps out is Twilight Princess. That was the last Zelda game I
Right.
played.
You're just
It's
like,
like,
you be a wolf.
well, I mean,
You
yeah,
wolf man.
I mean, yes, shut up. But anyways, like once you get whatever key in whatever temple, it's like, okay, I got the key, I got to backtrack, but like I know my environment now, so I know how to traverse it.
That's fair.
And let's say in real life, like if I was like, you know, there's a gap with let's say a monkey bars above it, I'm just like, and I don't see the monkey bars at first, and I'm like, fuck, how do I get across this gap? And then I look up, I'm like, oh, sweet monkey bars, and I get across that. Like once I get the thing I get and come back, I'm like, I know how to do this. This is easy. I'm a pro.
You're fraction of the time to go back to waste. I need to waste to backtrack.
It's as much as I don't like backtracking into games, it is a little bit. It's nice to like look at that puzzle if you have to do it again, because
Right.
some puzzles you complete and you just roll through it.
Sure.
If you have to like tackle that puzzle again and you're like, I know how to do this, like whatever, I got this. That's a little nice.
Total side note. I'm just mad at Twilight Princess because you break a mirror with your tears. How is that a thing?
Well,
It's magic. Work with it.
And I
I
think-
tear, and I saw it.
I think that feeling is kind of a consequence of we're kind of in that between generation where like we've experienced the 2-dimensional scrollers and the 3-dimensional exploring games.
Right.
Where it's you know, we've got kind of our instincts telling us to like progress in a game and move forward, so that if you have to backtrack, it feels kind of frustrating because that's like not what you're wanting to do.
I'm just waiting until it's VR and you're actually running around an open world.
I will
And then
say,
you run through your wall.
I will say, even though I've kind of compared God of War and Zelda, I do think those are both very good examples of how the game design forces you to explore your environment. What I'd like to do is compare how those games have done it throughout the years to how, like, say, Spyro made you explore the world, because I think those are very, very two different ways that they've gone about that.
And I'll agree with that. And I actually thought a whole lot about Spyro when you told me you wanted to come in and talk about it today, because in Spyro, it's a different kind of game because it's a collectathon, because all you want to do in Spyro is get that 100%.
Exactly.
You're running around picking up gems, picking up dragon eggs,
Finding
picking
the
up
regular trophies.
orbs, finding whatever trophies. All you want is to see that 100 out of 100 or whatever, because that makes you feel good. You're like, I completed that.
There are also parts of the game where you can't progress if you haven't 100% at a certain, like with the orbs.
Right, yeah.
Frequently, you can't go to the final boss until you've collected X number of orbs.
Yeah,
And then you
exactly.
have to backtrack and do the little like side quests where I'm like chasing bats or something like
Yeah,
that.
and for
to
me,
get an orb.
and me personally, as soon as I got whatever ability in Spyro that could get those gems and orbs, like I rushed back to the next level because I was like, I want to complete this. Like,
Right.
But in the sense that, yes, you need to explore your world in Spyro in a sense to collect the gems, but I'd say it's a little bit different compared to Zelda and God of War,
They're
because
different kinds of games.
Exploring isn't as much the point of the game.
yeah,
is what you're
exactly.
saying.
Like, I wouldn't even say exploring's
God
not
of War,
the
the point is to paint stuff red with the blood of your enemies.
yeah, but like in Spyro, it's not to explore; it's to get everything, because it's a collectathon. And there's nothing wrong with collectathons, because Spyro's probably like my top 5 favorite games of all time.
Sure.
And literally, you just hold down square and move around and pick up gems and shit. Like,
Favorite game of all time.
we'll get into that later, but like that, like it's super simplistic, and I love it. It just feels good to get that 100%.
Well, and I alluded earlier before, for those of you who weren't around before the microphone was turned on, I was talking with Noah about kind of, I feel like there's 90% of Spyro that's done kind of iffy, at least in my opinion. You know, because again, for what it is, I think it's fine.
Right.
I'm just not a huge fan of collectathons or a game
I'm
that
not
basically
either.
forces you to 100% the game and then you're done.
Yeah.
But I think there's 10% of Spyro that's done very, very well, and that's the bosses.
Can you please elaborate on that? Because
Certainly.
in all honesty, that was kind of my criticism on Spyro. So I'd like to hear what you said.
Well, and it's not even the bosses themselves, their ability or the difficulty or what have you. It's the way you have to go about beating the bosses, because usually they're tough. Especially like in Ripto's Rage, that there's those two like dragons or dinosaurs or whatever it is that Ripto is in possession of, and
I think it's Gulp and Crush, but
that's exactly what it was.
Okay.
And those are absolute pains in the ass to have to defeat, or at least I thought they were. But here's what I think they do very well, because they make you they by introducing you to these bosses, they're introducing you to something that you've very obviously never seen anything like in the game up to this point, and you have to kind of figure out on the fly how to even attack it, because you can't just breathe fire on it and hurt it.
Right.
You have to learn when it's going to be vulnerable. You have to learn, because they give you like items or different resources around the fight stage that you have to utilize specifically in this. Only in this point in the game am I going to use this item. And you need to learn how those work, when whatever the boss is vulnerable, how often it's vulnerable, and not only that, but the more you attack the monster, generally the faster it gets, the more aggressive it gets, and it changes its battle tactics. So you have to continue to learn and adapt throughout the entire boss fight. And see, I think that does a really cool thing for especially the young age people that were generally playing this, because that teaches you to have to adapt, and it teaches you how to be patient and learn to react only when you've learned enough about your environment to act.
Okay.
And that's what I think the boss fights and Spyro, because of the way they kind of force you to pay attention in ways that like Mario, like I'm gonna like ass pound something 3 times and like be done with the boss. Like that is the Mario staple.
Eric,
You know, and
pound.
right, and love you, Eric. And but I think that's something that Spyro really stood out, at least to me, is just because of the way it forced you to get creative and do something different every single time you were fighting a boss.
Okay, I'll give you that. I'm all for learning your environment before you react to it in a way. I personally, on all honesty, like, I honestly don't think Spyro really needed the bosses, because the bosses, like you mentioned, that... Okay, let me go through the Spyro bosses. Starting the original game, you start off, the first one's like a scarecrow. You hit him with your flame breath 3 times, and there's not a waiting period to do that. You can just aggro him, hit him 3 times with the flame breath, and he's done. So that's whatever. I think the second stage, it's like the war arena in the original Spyro the Dragon. Oh shit, what's the boss in that one? Fuck, I'm losing.
Google's your friend.
Yeah, well, fuck it. You know what? We're gonna jump to Gulp and Crush and Ripto, because
We're already familiar with them.
Because of those bosses in that game, I think those 3 were perfect. They did a great job in the sense where you had to what I said, of having to learn and react. There wasn't a whole lot of... You couldn't just bum rush a scarecrow and flame breath him 3 times and win. You legitimately had to sit and wait and figure things out. With Crush, you had to wait for him to come and strike you at a certain point where you could... I think you activated rocks that came to crash down on him.
Yep.
With Gulp, you had to pick up rockets and shoot them at him at appropriate times, and he was constantly shooting at you. With Ripto, he was a 3-part stage where he was on a mechanical Gulp, where you had to figure out how to fight him off. Then you took on Ripto himself, which had a whole new different sets of attacks, and then you took on a flaming bird Ripto, which he eventually ended up burning down in a fire, which I can really appreciate. I think the third game, except for the sorceress at the very end, I feel like most of those bosses were bum rushy bosses, or aggro bosses, if you will, because with the first one, all you had to do is keep running into him. Like, he had some attacks, but they were never attacks that really pushed you back. You could be constantly progressing, and with him, you hit him until he went into the lava 3 times. It was kind of like,
I do remember that.
That Mario trope is like 3 hits and you're out. I remember there being a boss in, I think it was the 3rd Spyro game, where it was the Bat guy, I'm assuming.
Yeah, I do remember that one. You had to. That was another. It was kind of similar to the rocket thing, where you had to collect things that could fire projectiles. You could fire at it, right?
Right. Yeah. I feel like a lot of those bosses were self-explanatory, but I don't even know what I think Spyro 2 did it a lot better than the 3rd one, but I think personally I was more into the collecting the gems. Like the bosses and me were just like a general block for me. It's like, okay, I got to beat you so I can go do what I really want to do, which is 100% everything.
Right, and this was kind of the, I'm unfortunately allowing myself to be biased kind of with the nostalgia goggles a little bit, because that was, Ripto's Rage was hands down my favorite game for the PlayStation when I was younger. But kind of, here's I think why that might have been. In my 8-year-old imagination, as you see, Ripto riding whichever one, and the other one that like kind of walked upright was next to him. You see that, and you're just like, holy shit! Like, right from the get-go, you feel horrendously underprepared to face whatever the hell that is.
Yeah.
And all 3 of those bosses are ones where you are like substantially weaker than whatever it is you're facing, and so you have to strategize and learn in order to beat the boss, because you're not able to compare physically. And I think just kind of, a side note with that, just the thought that, like, as I kind of thought about it, each world was kind of based on, like, a different season, I believe.
Yes.
But then, as you were kind of waiting there, you knew Ripto had kind of locked himself up somewhere, and that whatever boss was waiting for you. And to me, just kind of that foreboding sense of, it's waiting for me, I have to get through all of this, and then I go, you can see the entrance to it, you just can't get into it yet. You're looking at the entrance of it, and you're thinking, wow, it's right there, it's waiting for me. Like, that, to me, that, as a little kid, to me, that just, like, that absolutely blew my mind.
Okay. I mean, and there's totally nothing wrong with that, because I, too, have felt that way about games, but if I'm being completely honest, let's talk about the true boss of the Spyro games, and that was motherfucking Moneybags.
Oh my god.
The dude that stood in your way at every chance, so you can't...
Moneybags.
You cannot progress until you give him blank amount of gems. And as a kid, I wasn't like a completionist like I was now. I was running through the levels because at that time it's like I wanted to, see what was after this. I wasn't trying to pick up every single gem as I went through.
Right.
So then you run into Moneybags. I'm like, fuck, I can't progress. I got to go back in these worlds and pick up the gems. And like, okay.
I hate collectathons because I got scarred as a child.
Because of
N
Moneybags.
64 Donkey Kong. And I couldn't find the last goddamn golden banana. I looked everywhere twice. I couldn't figure it. This is pre-internet. I couldn't figure it out. I never beat that game. Donkey Kong never celebrated. I failed him. So yeah, I don't like. I mean, these days I can look up the internet, but that's cheating, and you have to be like, oh well.
I appreciate the not looking up stuff.
Well,
but
Spyro things are frequently a little easier to find than like the last golden. Usually they're like relatively, except for a few like little secret nooks and crannies.
I definitely say that Spyro is much easier.
It's
than
not hard to find all
Donkey
the gems
Kong
on a level.
because, well, I guess they're both 3D, but I don't know. Maybe there are two. I don't know. That's a whole different other subject. But may I say that Spyro 3: Year of the Dragon, when you got to take all of your gems back from Moneybags, it was the best. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I do. I know exactly what
That
you're
was
talking about.
the best
Wasn't
moment.
it like you have to chase him down?
You
and
chased
have to,
him,
like, breathe fire
you
on him?
kept attacking him, and until you got all your gems back. You chased him, you hit him with Flame Breath, you hit him with the charge. It was perfect. It was the most joyous moment that I can recall from childhood gaming. Was getting, and like, it feels nice when you pick up a gem, like you pick it up, you see a counter go up, because it has the ba-ding, like, everything about picking up a gem sounds good. Now, times that by 100, when you're getting all this, like, a giant stream of gems hitting you at once, you're just like, this is amazing.
Great. Have a very sexy hook for when you get an item.
Exactly. And that's
You're bring, you're da-da-da-da, whatever it is.
And I think that kind of goes back to immersion, which we talked about a while ago. Just like, or not immersion, the polish of your game. Like, those little things really do make it.
Well, that's also the kind of thing that keeps you playing, because it gives you that kind of reward for doing what the game wants you to do. It gives you that little, you see the counter go up, you hear the sound of money. All those things are.
Hits, like you just
right. It gives you all those little rewards for doing what the game is wanting you to do.
Right. I couldn't.
So we're all just conditioned monkeys living in the world of video games, completely at the mercy of the game developers.
I mean,
they are gods and we are mortals.
I mean, as today, I know some people might cringe at it. I still consider myself a gamer, and like those little things, I'm all about the little tings, all the good feelingy things. Like, you don't have to give me a great story. Like, if you give me a sweet sound effect when I pick up something, I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna keep picking up these things.
Right, and myself being a mathematician and a man of science,
I always like mathematician better.
See, yeah, I'm a mathematician.
There you go.
And I am all about. I love games, but more importantly than that, I love when games are smart.
Mm-hmm.
And I love when a game was designed in a way that made you be creative and made you think outside the box to interact in the way that they wanted you to.
I agree.
Borderlands.
And yes, and I think, to me, that is, in and of itself, that is, to me, what makes a good game.
I'm gonna pause you real
Smart
quick,
writing
Anthony.
is
Porter, when Anthony was talking about games that like make you think outside the box in a sense,
Yes.
you said Borderlands, and I'm curious where you are gonna go with that for that game.
Well, he was talking about making their games smartly.
In what sense? I'm assuming you're talking about
terms of-
Borderlands 2 is what
Yeah,
you're talking
I'm thinking
about?
of Borderlands 2 because that's primarily the Borderlands I
When
played.
I think smart writing, I think shooting boner farts with the shotguns.
I mean, really though, in some ways it was the game, but it was a mixture. It wasn't just the story, because the story was smart, and the way they wrote it was smart, and the characters were very smart in a way. But it's also the gameplay, because the way they have you do certain things, and the way they make normally what would be boring gunplay into something interesting and unique and totally fit within the world, but also make you laugh your fucking ass off the whole time, you know?
Okay. All right.
So that's what I mean by when I say Borderlands, I consider a smart game.
Okay, I'll agree with you on that. Okay. So I just wanted to hear your 2 cents, because when I heard it originally, when you said Borderlands, I thought of the first one, and I was like, I don't think that was a good game in general.
2. I never played
2?
it.
Okay, I'll agree with you on that.
Yeah, moving away from kind of the classic games that we've been talking about for the consoles is, so I worked a very boring desk job last summer. And so you could almost say that I've beaten almost the entirety of addicting games. Like the whole website, I have almost beaten the entire thing.
Hello, nostalgia goggles.
Well, yes and no. Some of the newer stuff on there I think is fascinating because, so the whole trope where you're, going through like the Link dungeons or God of War puzzles and this and that, and having to observe the room and learn as much about it as you can.
Mm-hmm.
I think some of the most fascinating and interesting games that have come out are like those escape the room games. Do you know the ones I'm talking about?
Is it like the kind of point and click adventures?
Yeah, where like you have a key hidden under this, and you need to get like a lock code to unlock a safe that like shuts off the power before like something happens, and then essentially that. And I think those are very fascinating because like you have to look everywhere in the room. You have to be able to kind of put the hints they give you like in a row mentally, so you can see like kind of what they're trying to get you to see with it.
Right.
I just think that's an excellent example of kind of what did I call it in my notes here? Like cause-effect relationship.
Right.
Where it's because of how they have the game, you are now responsible for completing the puzzle.
The one that jumps to my mind, I don't know if you've ever played it. I want to say it was on Newgrounds. It was like an Alice in Wonderland point and click adventure, but it was very, very dark. Where I think you're the rabbit and you end up finding Alice dead. But with those games, I think I really do enjoy those too.
My time spent on Newgrounds wasn't on that section of Newgrounds.
I know what you're saying, Mark. But I almost like if there's not a timer, I kind of want to set it for me because there comes to a point with those kind of games where you're just like, what do I do? And you're clicking everywhere on the screen. And when I get to that point in the game, it's like, no, I don't want to be literally clicking every inch of the screen. Like, if it has a timer, part of me is like, okay, I want to sit down, I want to analyze the situation. Like, how many screens do I have to look at?
Right.
What's the most viable area that I need to click on? I guess more of what I'm saying, if you play it right, I think those games are fantastic. But if you are a person that's just like, clicking away at literally everything, then it just totally... It destroys the immersion.
Well, and I think that all goes down to what your interests are anyway.
Yeah.
I think somebody who is going to be clicking on everything and getting frustrated with it, like that's probably not like the kind of game they need to play over and over again. But actually, as you were talking about that like darker Alice in Wonderland thing, that brought to mind another franchise that not a whole lot of people know about. That's all based online, but it's a point and click discovery adventure similar to those, but it's got a very fascinating. It's a series of at least like five or six games at this point, and you're kind of slowly still learning what the hell the lore is of this story. And I would love to see you do a let's play on say maybe the first game. Take you 15-20 minutes.
And the title is called
Rusty Lake.
Rusty
And
Lake.
those of you listening at home, go ahead and look up Rusty Lake. I believe is the name of it. And then
turned into the Rusty Trombone.
it is not. But Rusty Lake, the whole idea is it has a lot to do with So there's this detective, Dale Vandermeer, I believe is his name, and something I believe either somebody murdered him or he accidentally killed somebody, and you're gradually like uncovering his memories through like a really interesting artistic concept with cubes, because Cube Escape is another one that you'll find that listed under, but Rusty Lake is the lake where all of these events transpire.
Okay.
And but I enjoy it. It's very dark. It's very like almost what the hell is I'm blanking on the name of the director who did like some of the Alice in Wonderland and like Nightmare Before Christmas.
Tim Burton.
It's very like Tim Burton-esque. But I would love, just because I'd love to see your reaction and input on it. I'd love to see you do a let's play on something from that series. Nobody that I know of has done that.
I would honestly, I'm all for playing new games, so I'll definitely take a
Highly
look into
recommend.
it.
It's free pretty much anywhere.
And if
but
you guys would like to watch me play it, I don't care because I'm gonna play it anyway. So be seeing that on my channel here soon.
Oh, it's worth your time though. It's really fascinating. Has an interesting yet confusing story. I think it's really worth it.
I'm definitely down to play. Okay, guys, expect me to be playing that here sometime in the near future. I'm looking forward to it, whatever it is going to be. Do you have any more points that you'd like to touch upon? Or
No, I think we about covered all the main ones.
Okay.
So good news for everybody around here. I am out of things to say.
No.
We
Only
enjoyed
took an
the
hour and a
voice.
half.
No, it's been an absolute pleasure having all of y'all on here. I don't want to wrap it up right now. I want to hit on one
Always
last
wrap it up,
thing.
kids.
You asked us our favorite games.
Certainly.
I don't know if you stated yours. Or what? Let's say of your top 3, one that you'd like to mention.
So I am a huge God of War fan.
Okay.
I really, it's and I.
Can you name for me, if you would go back to what I mentioned earlier, like the 3 things that like you can use to make a good game? Like it was immersion and mechanics or
Yeah.
that blank slate. Like what is it that makes God of War good for you? Is it the Greek mythology? Is it destroying everyone? Is it the audio? Is it the world? What is it?
So it's you almost have you have a tale of two Kratoses almost, and I think because you start off, Kratos is a Spartan warrior,
Right.
and he's kind of become a mercenary of Ares and the rest of the gods. He's kind of been essentially whored out by them
Yeah.
to kill just about whoever the hell they want him to. And at a certain point his whole family gets killed off. And so then all of a sudden the series switches and the whole idea is literally going after the gods and hunting them down and killing them. And to me, I think it's an awesome tale of redemption, but using kind of my criteria to make it what I think is a good game. So how does the game look compared to its contemporaries? Well, I think for its time, considering when these came out, this was early 2000s?
Yeah, it was originally a PS2 title.
PS1 title originally.
It was a PS1?
I think God of War was PS1, and then the rest of them were PS2 and 3.
I would say I remember God of War 3 was PS3, but I think it was. I honestly could be
I could be
wrong.
wrong
I
on
think it's
this.
PS2.
I am almost positive God of War 1 was a late PS1 game.
Okay.
I could totally be wrong about that. But however, the time frame is still very similar.
Yeah.
Comparing graphically the things that they put together, I recently played through the entire series a little less than a year ago. Last summer is when I did. I frequently forgot that I was playing an early 2000s PlayStation game. Because it's very well designed, it's very aesthetically appealing and pleasing.
It holds up.
It definitely does.
The first one was PS2.
Oh,
Okay, so I apologize for that. That I was incorrect on that. However, I still think the time frame it was early PS2,
Yeah,
unless I'm
2005.
mistaken.
Yeah.
Yes, okay.
Roughly similar.
So the second one, the environment is built in a way that lets you explore it. Well, I kind of touched on this earlier. Since most of God of War is very puzzle based, you have to understand the environment because the perfect example of this is the labyrinth in the third one.
Yep.
The moving boxes and chains that you're having to put together just to get through the labyrinth that I believe was built by Daedalus. That I thought was brilliant. That was an absolute work of art. It was very well done. The other one was as you're going through the garden. I think in the third one, as you're having to essentially oh, what the hell is it? You're using that like green light thing to kind of augment reality.
Apollo's head.
Lightsaber.
That's
Apollo's head, where you
Yeah.
rip it off of him. Yeah.
Yeah, so you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But because the environment is created specifically for you to explore and learn more about it. Now, granted, it's not open world. It's linear in nature. You're not going to necessarily backtrack a lot,
But it feels open.
It feels open.
Yeah.
It is, but because Kratos is. He has a purpose. He has an end goal. He's not an explorer. He's on a fucking warpath to kill the gods, the titans, whoever
Anything
else.
in his way.
Pretty much anything. And so, you've got to figure in reality, Kratos himself would probably have a pretty linear path. The path of least resistance through all of that. So, but I think it's designed very well in that if you look at a room long enough, you're able to piece together what you're supposed to do. And then once you do, you have nobody but yourself to blame for figuring that out. The third point I have kind of ties into what I just said. So my third point was environment created in a way that encourages interacting to learn how to progress. That's more or less what I just talked about. It's just that whole I'm big on the cause and effect nature of games. The game wants you to do something, and it's done in a way that allows you to figure out how to do it on your own.
Okay.
And then my last one is, do you care about the story? And I think, to me, it was easy to care about the story because I love mythology. Believe it or not, I'm actually a pretty big mythology buff. Or at least I used to be. I used to read a lot about it. And so the fact that we've got a new character that's being introduced as if he's a part of Greek mythology and interacting with a lot of stories, like you've got Hercules plays a role in it, and like all of the gods and goddesses, they throw a lot of old myths and stories, with a very God of War twist.
Yeah.
And so for me, having heard of a lot of these things before I played the game, it was always a nice homage to something that I used to love to read about. But that being said, how do they get you to care about the story? Well, they introduce you to a character who's just had his family killed by gods.
He's had his family killed by himself.
But but it was with
by
the
gods.
right. You get kind of what I'm getting at though. It was not necessarily his own.
Yeah.
He was kind of enraged by whatever. I'm forgetting the details.
Well, if I'm correct, basically Ares. So Kratos, being a normal dude, was taking out everyone in the name of Ares, and at one point, and he had fought the barbarians a couple times. This one time, his entire Spartan army gets wiped out. He's like, Ares, I'm yours. Let me take them out.
Right.
He kills them, and then Ares, after he wiped out the barbarians, he's like, I don't think you're putting your all into this. So he tells Kratos, go attack this village. Kratos goes to attack this village. Lo and behold, his wife and his daughter were there.
Right.
From there, he becomes a broken man.
It's
goes
the classic your attachment is holding you back bit.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
then he gets the ashes of his dead
Right.
family glued to his skin.
Yeah, and
and
then
he's
Well, and
kind of
that's-
upset about it.
That's all coming back to me now. It's
been a
it's
while.
only been a year, but I'm kind of hazy on some of the plot points.
Right.
But I still think it does a great way. It does a great job of kind of at least getting you to sympathize.
Yes.
Because your mission in the game is the exact same mission as Kratos.
I agree. You want to avenge your family. You want to get, at least in the first one, you want to get it back at Ares. It's like, no, fuck you. You made me kill my wife and kid. Like, I'm coming for you, and nothing's gonna stop.
And just
me.
as a side note, what I thought was brilliant for how they went about the whole Ares thing. You spend like 90% of the game looking at a giant version of Ares wrecking shit out of the Grecian soldiers. Because he's kind of, for the most part, in the background of whatever mission Kratos is currently working on.
Right.
But you look over it and you see this giant Ares.
like a titan of a man.
Right. And I thought what was incredible was the entire game, you're looking at that, and you're like, oh shit, I gotta fight that at some point. And this is before you realize, spoiler alert, you
go
become
to his side.
You go to his
Yeah.
size, but before it's like, man, I'm about to be 5.5 feet tall, having to fight something that's like Sears Tower size.
Yeah.
I thought that was a really interesting way to go about that, just
Yeah.
making you have to look at him the entire game.
That foreboding evil. It's like, that's what I'm gunning
That's what I'm
for.
fighting.
Like, I'm gonna take you on one day.
What's that whole, and I mentioned this with the Spyro thing, you're looking at your endpoint the entire game.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of when you're going to get there.
Very reminiscent of the hero's journey. Do you know what I mean when I say the hero's journey?
I'd
Porter,
like you to elaborate on it a little bit.
Honestly, I think that might be. I think I'm going to share the hero's journey on a different podcast because
Sure.
it's
yeah.
quite
Pick one.
it's quite lengthy, but essentially a lot of movies, a lot of games, a lot of storytellers use this outline.
It's that, yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
It's like I'm whatever person. I'm broken down. I'm getting brought back up. I'm broken down again. There's an end goal.
I'm Mr.
Well,
Basics. Look
yeah,
at me.
we'll definitely get into that on
There's
a
that whole
different
trope
time.
of the hero struggles to readapt to his original environment at the end
Yes.
of the story. Yep.
Exactly. But guys, thank you so much for coming on to talk with me. I never imagined we would have gone damn near an hour and a half into this thing, but I've really enjoyed this with you all. It goes
Thanks for
to
inviting us. I'm happy to
Yeah,
be
No,
absolutely.
And again, anytime y'all want to talk about video games, because one day I might not be able to record this podcast and Mitchell can. Like, I'd love to have you all, anyone else out there that just wants to talk about video games, we can Skype and Discord. Just let me know, because I'm all for this 2 days a week. It's a good, it's just enjoyable to detox about, whatever's going on in life. It's like, I don't got to think about going into work tomorrow. I don't got to think about what's going to be going down a week down the road. I'm just going to sit down and talk about video games. So again, thank you all so much for being on.
Sure.
I hope to have you all again in the near future. And people that are watching, if you all want to see anyone come in here, whether it's someone you know or you want to hear these guys again, let me know down below.
Be sure to keep requesting Anthony to keep me coming back to these.
Favorite celebrity will work on it.
I would also like to say one more thing. No, I really appreciate you having me on here, but I would also like to wish Asa a happy birthday.
Oh, well, I guess not thank you. Happy birthday, Asa. That's my girlfriend. She turned 21, and tomorrow's about to be a whole lot of fun. So, Asa, if you listen to this, because I don't know if you do.
Remember your day, you're doing it wrong.
If you listen to an hour and a half of my podcast just to hear a happy birthday, which I'm not going to tell you is in there, but thank you. I really appreciate that if you would listen to these podcasts, and I'm sure I'll figure out down the road if you actually listen to this. But anyways, guys, thank you guys so much for watching, and we will see you all next week. Bye-bye.